Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and a lot of people asked me to review the Acolyte, and I didn't really want to because I don't really have that much to say about it, which hasn't already been said by hundreds of reviewers on YouTube. I basically agree with most of them. Yes, it is bad, but I actually don't think it's as bad as Star Trek Discovery, for example, because in Discovery, literally every single minute of it had something wrong with it. I could literally complain about every single scene. There were so many illogical things, not just with the science fiction of it or the continuity with the other shows, but even basic common sense stuff. So I could literally complain about every single line, every single scene in Discovery, which I guess was a good thing for me because it gave me so much material for so many videos. But when I was watching the Acolyte, yes, I did notice some things that didn't make any sense, but not as many as in Discovery. So I actually thought the first two episodes were not as bad as Discovery, and I think visually the show was okay. It wasn't as annoying as Discovery often was, because Discovery kept trying all these gimmicks of the shaky cam and the lens flares and the camera spinning all over the place. And so at least in the Star Wars shows, it's not visually annoying to me, and also no continuity contradictions with the rest of the Star Wars universe. I'm talking strictly about the visuals, I'm not talking about the story, I'll get to that. But at least visually it wasn't annoying, and some of the action scenes were kind of even good in places. And so it wasn't as annoying to me as Star Trek Discovery was. And of course there's all the woke stuff that was also in Discovery, but here it's even worse because there's almost no white men at all in the show. And those who do show up are either cowardly or weak, or they have to apologize in front of the black woman for something that wasn't even their fault, and then they die, basically. So it is similar to Discovery, but even worse than that. And all these all-female cults, and so there are a lot of the same kind of, pushing the agendas of, same-sex parents and all that kind of stuff, which at first it didn't actually annoy me. It only annoyed me when they made the point to show that the black mother is more loving toward the two girls, and the other mother, who is that alien with the spikes on the head like Darth Maul, she was kind of being more strict and more difficult for the children. And so at first I thought, oh, so she must be the stepmother, so the black mother must be the biological mother, since she is human and black like the girls. So obviously she's the biological mother who gave birth to them, and then they said no, it's the other way around. It's the one with the alien spikes who is the biological mother, and the other one just used the force to create them or something. So that's when the show kind of lost me. Before that, I actually wasn't that annoyed by it. Yes, there were some logical problems, like when she was out in space and there was suddenly a fire on the ship in space, and I could explain that by saying, the oxygen comes from within the ship. And so we saw that kind of stuff in all science fiction, in all the Star Trek shows and Star Wars. There were always fireballs in space, and we can always come up with excuses saying it's the oxygen from within, or it's some kind of plasma fire that doesn't need air, or we can come up with some convoluted technobubble to try to explain it. And so it wasn't really that annoying, those kinds of mistakes. Also, since this show is a prequel, it kind of tried to be similar to the Phantom Menace. It showed those Trade Federation aliens, and it was funny when they suddenly talked normally without any accent, but the ones we saw in the prequels spoke with an accent that sounded kind of Asian, and so maybe they didn't want to offend Asian people, and so that's why they had to remove that strange accent from the aliens. So they just talk without any accent in English, so that was kind of strange because it just makes it more noticeable. Like if they just talk the same way they did in the Phantom Menace, no one would say anything because it's the same aliens, so they sound the same, so it wouldn't be so noticeable. But they made the point to remove that strange accent to be more politically correct, I guess. And then they cast one of the Jedi characters is an Asian man who does talk with an Asian accent, and so it just makes all of that kind of stuff more laughable. And also it was strange how they didn't bother to show Yoda until I think the very last episode. They showed like a few seconds of him from behind and he didn't even say anything, so what was the point of that? And throughout the show we never hear or see Yoda at all. We only see that guy with the huge head who was in the prequels, who is an alien, so I guess it's okay continuity wise to make him that old. I guess it might contradict some books or something, but books are not canon, and so I personally didn't have a problem with that. At least it's some kind of connection with the prequels. And also, of course, the problem of this show being a prequel is that they just cannot do certain things. And so the Jedi cannot know that the Sith are not extinct. And so obviously everyone's memory has to be wiped out in the end, or it has to be classified in the end simply to fit continuity. So that's one of the many problems of making a prequel to a prequel. You have all these restrictions and you just cannot make certain things happen. And we have a short clip of what appears to be Darth Plagueis hiding in some cave, and yet he doesn't do anything, he doesn't say anything, and so what's even the point of it? It's like a member berry. Like, oh, you remember that story of Darth Plagueis? Here he is, he's just hiding in a cave looking at everything. I guess he's the one manipulating everything from the side, but we don't actually see him or hear him do anything, and so it's kind of pointless. And so that's how I would describe this whole show. It's basically pointless, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't really change anything about anything. And so it's all pointless. And again, visually, I didn't really have that many problems with it. We had a few cool action scenes, and we had that villain character who I think was kind of interesting. I think they were inspired by that joke theory that Jar Jar was actually pretending to be clumsy, that he was actually the Sith mastermind behind everything. He was the evil one. He was the Phantom Menace who was just pretending to be a goofy alien all along. And so I think they might have taken that idea into the character of this villain who at first pretends to be kind of goofy and clumsy and an idiot, and then he turns out to be the actual villain. I guess he's the apprentice of Darth Plagueis. They didn't actually explain any of it, like we don't know, and the show ended without any explanation to anything, and I guess there might never be, and so again it just makes it annoying. And they did show a few interesting bits, like they show that they actually make the red lightsabers by kind of crushing the crystals of a normal lightsaber and then it turns red, which we never saw before. And it's kind of silly because it makes lightsabers like mood sticks, like you can know if someone is evil or not by simply the way he interacts with his lightsaber. So it is a little bit silly, but again, not really a problem. At least it's something new and interesting. I think there was also a scene of someone using a new kind of lightsaber, which was more like a whip, like it was not straight, it could bend, and so that was kind of interesting, I guess. At least it's something fresh and new and not the same old thing again and again. And also the whole idea of making babies using the Force is obviously lifted from the prequels. That's how Anakin was made by someone. It was never fully explained exactly who created Anakin, but obviously it's now possible to use the Force to create life, and the one who's born that way, I guess, will be more powerful in the Force. And in this case it creates these two girls who are identical twins in the future, and yet when they were girls they were not identical, which is also kind of funny, and they also had the same haircut throughout their life. And they try to add all kinds of gray moral area, like showing like the whole conflict between these space witches and the Jedi are because of some misunderstanding, and that's what caused this whole mess. Like none of the sides are actually bad or good. It's more of a gray area, and I kind of appreciate the idea of adding some moral grayness to all of it, but the way it was done is just nothing makes any sense if you actually think about it. Everyone are basically idiots, and obviously a lot of cringy moments with all of it. And you know, there were some of the Jedi characters were actually not that bad. I thought they might become good characters, and then they just kill everyone off. Everyone just dies immediately without any emotional impact even. And so, yes, this show was pretty terrible, but I actually don't think it was as bad as Star Trek Discovery, because in Discovery I could literally dissect every single scene. There was something illogical or unscientific or badly written characters. Like every single scene was something terrible about it. And here it was mostly, I think, the characters who were kind of bad and the overall story was kind of bad, but not a lot of things annoyed me in the details of it. I guess there's the bigger problem with all of Star Wars that I always complain about, not just in this show, that all the technology level is always the same everywhere in the galaxy, and across centuries apparently technology doesn't seem to advance in Star Wars. Like they are stuck in the same level, and everyone in the whole galaxy are exactly on the same level. So that's something that always annoyed me in Star Wars, not just in this show. That's why I think Star Trek is more interesting, because it is more of a science fiction, while Star Wars was always more like a fantasy, simply set in a science fiction kind of setting, but it doesn't really make sense if you think about a lot of these details. And I think the main problem I have with this show is that it was just boring. Like, there are some nice action scenes, but that's basically it. There is nothing that interesting at all in the story or the characters. and there are all the annoying cringy parts, the power of many, all that moments is obviously really cringy, and so I agree with most critics that it is a pretty bad show. Maybe even the worst Star Wars show. If I think about it, yeah, I would rank it as the worst one yet. And I don't really have that much more to say about it. So, to make reviews, to nitpick things and analyze them, I would have to watch an episode more than once, and I really don't want to. So you'll forgive me if I missed a lot of details and didn't go into them, because I just cannot and don't want to watch it again to analyze it that deeply. So that's all I had to say about it, and we can discuss it in the comments section below, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.